so stress-free is organizing the thing. So we started how to balance the different needs and sections, implementation of access for the different user communities. Anybody to start with this balance issue? I just would like to say that balancing is very difficult. So it is really a masterpiece to balance it. So I saw your slide. You explained it very interesting to me. To see. Yeah. So you can just complete that.
Really?
Yes.
Oh man, I don't really know what to say. Yeah, briefly.
Sorry, can I just ask, are we talking about the physical access? I'm not sure I understood the question.
No, this access to the research infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was just completed. And balance and manage the different needs. Specifically, as far as I understand, what they have behind this question is that in principle you have limited time given by nature, 24 hours. But then, when there is a specific need like urgent access or pandemic invented or not invented or whatever, so then the manager needs to balance all these needs. And there are research infrastructures which are suffering a lot because the people are complaining.
Okay.
I don't know how it is specifically in your case, but the research infrastructure which were related with medical science and technology, they were really under pressure. Actors as well, I mean, they had some problems.
I can say something.
Yeah.
Then later.
Okay.
But then you start.
He said that he talked already, so no.
Oh, okay.
I can say stuff on this.
So Actris is providing access to the facilities that we have, and as I said in the earlier session, we have more than 80 facilities. So the nature of the access, the physical access and the remote access is very different from a single-sided where the time is the limitation. We have more problems in managing the overall access to this wide variety of the facilities. And one important component of our infrastructure are the atmospheric chambers. And they are in the research infrastructure only for providing access and to perform experiments. And there, the limitation in time may come, and how to prioritize, how to manage exactly the different needs, what is the basis. And we have been working a lot on this, and the community with the atmospheric chambers has been working for 20 years for really trying to manage and putting streamlining on the processes. But then for the others, these 60 to 80 facilities, it's voluntary, but many of the facilities want to provide access, but then we have a totally different kind of scene for managing, arranging the access to the facilities. So this is kind of a bit different from what was discussed earlier.
Maybe my point was exactly on the fact that, for example, for EPOS, we are mainly providing virtual access to data. So that's why I see this is more something for, so maybe for research infrastructure providing access to data, the issue can be, which is not the case for EPOS, but it might be for the case for medical infrastructure, if there are thousands of users at the same time want to access to the data. And so the issue is not really how to balance and provide the time, but simply to implement the, let's say, the capability of the infrastructure to receive requests for downloading or having access to the data. So maybe something a little bit different.
Yeah, Thank you so much. I would like to have the second question because it is very complicated, and then we can return again. I give you a minute to read it. So based on survey, they found that there...
These are two different points though, aren't they? One's about digital stuff and one's about industry access. It seems like it's two different points actually, and maybe we should address as two different points.
This is specifically as far as...
Oh, data access to industry, is it? Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, are they different points or are they data and industry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. For me, it's two different points. It's about access to data and digital infrastructures, and also access and access to industry, I think. But maybe we have concerning the data and digital infrastructure, as you mentioned in the previous session. There is EOSC also now, so we have probably to develop more and more research infrastructure are connected to EOSC, but we have to probably to define a better way, or to develop a synergy with EOSC and with EOSC. And we don't speak about it, but for the medical domain, what is very important, it's we have a very difficult. It's very difficult to under data because it could be data of patient, and so you have some national legislation, and you don't have a European legislation, and it's a very difficult problem now. For medical data, we have to define a way because to share the data, it's a private data, and also to archive the medical data through the different national regulations. But it's not the point here.
I think myself, if I'm asked to write guidelines, what could I do in order to make it appropriate? And I don't have any clue how to do it for industry, because I don't know what kind of industry. So in a sense, this is specifically tailored by the need. But I'm surprised that this survey highlights that the data access and digital infrastructure access is not appropriately considered. But
I think that the current Charter of Access, I think, was defined for transnational access, but not so virtual or remote access as it was at the beginning. I don't know if the current Charter has been updated, maybe not so much. I understood it's not the case, or it's not so much updated concerning the new environment, and it's just I don't know exactly. And for industry probably they don't. For industry, I think it's a completely different point of view, because industry are user, but probably they don't know how the data, what they want. Industry, they need data and they want data, and they don't care probably how the data has been has been developed and obtained and so on. And probably it's a different point of view, because it's a one-stop shop or something like that, probably through catalog. And you have to define a way, easy way to get the data. In fact, for researcher, I think the question of to access of data. It could,
industry, as far as I understand it. I can guess, this is just a guess, that because of the open science and open data approach, which most of the research infrastructure are obliged to follow, it is quite difficult to meet the IPR for the industry at the same time. It could be the source of this uncertainty. I don't know. I did not see that survey.
Distributed infrastructure, when it's a different question of IPR and technology transfer are not organized at central level, but the node or the national facility involved in the European research infrastructure want the national facility wants to take wants to negotiate by itself the question of IPR and technology transfer. So it could be also a question at the European level. It's not negotiated at the central level, I think. For some of them, not always, but it's a big question, I think so.
It is just that I think I agree with you, but you could put something in the guidelines, like that you think about this, or that you make in your own infrastructure, well, the access rules clear for whoever is going to use it, including the users from industry. And also, well, the people who are using the data. So some infrastructures are very open, so it is just free for all, let's say, and others require some registration. But I don't want to take up your time more.
Well, we are discussing. I wanted to add 3 sort of points of feedback. The first one is, are guidelines sufficient, or we need to think more about some educational opportunities and programs? I share this from my experience in the digital humanities domain, where we could offer data sets, but then we deal with researchers who are not necessarily fully aware what to do with them. And then different stakeholders have different approaches. Some say, let them find their way around. Others say, let's educate them. My question was, are guidelines sufficient, or we also need to think about education? And the second point I wanted to make is, in some cases we try to illustrate the usefulness of the infrastructure having clear use cases. So do we think that such an approach would work with the industries? And then we are, I think, in a bit of a chicken and the egg situation. Who needs to come with these use cases? Are the industries the ones who should take the lead, or the infrastructure should somehow identify potential dimensions of involving the industries better, and then develop possible scenarios? When they start identifying with these scenarios, maybe more will come towards using the infrastructures. Actually, these are 2 points. I think this is enough for the time being.
You included educational part there, and you have the scale about education, how long time you need to educate the users. And what I saw in Andrew's slide was the change of the user profile, and that there are much more users that are not professional users of a specific research infrastructure. And usually I'm saying that we people, although we know it, we easily forget how long it needs to be professional, not professional, but even a user of anything, including microphone or computer or whatever. And when we write a time schedule for specific things, we forget that there is a human internal timetable of the brain and how to have these skills important. So I noticed that the people more and more talk about education and research infrastructure, which makes me happy because the university is there for this. But all these people who are talking about this forget that we need a couple of semesters or a couple of years in order to prepare these users. And this is not in the program, including in this program, which we should, Peter, would you please put the third question, which was similar to the previous case, what we should put into the work program related to access. I immediately would say that this aspect of training and letting not typical users to access the research infrastructures should be specifically considered in the work program, have specific funding regime and time allocated. So 2 years is not enough. But somebody else. You? No?
I will if I actually need to.
You don't?
I've already said a lot.
Okay.
I don't have answer to this, but more in a detailed level that, of course, we have the transnational access programs are very important for us and are continuing those. But we have also users that cannot utilize the transnational access, and those are within the country of the facility. And if you think about the industrial users or private sector users, they tend to prefer having access to the facilities that are close their company, and they cannot utilize the transnational access per se. So somehow to take this into account, that we have a variety ways and supporting the variety ways of accessing the facilities in different modes.
Yeah. So in fact you are saying that we should establish different regimes, different modes.
Maybe I will add, so to amplify that, I'll give you one example. So when I was at the Diamond Synchrotron, the Swedes complained to me that we were taking all of their best synchrotron users. And the reason was, we paid for Swedish scientists to come to use our facility. The Swedish facility didn't pay for its own national users, which seems crazy. And if you look at the marginal cost, it's down at the 1% of operating a facility. If that is the threshold to access, then we should look at ways of removing that threshold. And at the very least, this is why I said there needs to be a discussion about the huge variety of attitudes to transnational access across Europe to ensure we have a level playing field. Also, I think some national funding bodies don't necessarily appreciate what is the value of TNA, because it also aids international collaboration. It brings the very best scientists in the world to your facility. And yes, it costs a little bit more, but I would argue, but we should quantify this, that there's a real benefit to be had from it. And I don't think anyone's tried to establish the benefit.
Just to add one more thing. Regarding the data, as we already know, probably, every data which we share or doing or using by, I don't know, open data portal or something should be defined how we can use it, what we can do with it, who can use it, where it can be used, etc., etc. So at the beginning, it's very important to give clearly instructions about the usage of any kind of the data, especially the data also which are coming from some kind of the research infrastructure, because somebody paid for it. So you cannot just take it and share it and use whatever you want. That's everywhere. But one more thing which I would like to mention here is related to these surveys, because it's very important today. Previously, most of the people use those surveys just to get some kind of statistics, just to finish those things, to show it as some kind of monitoring, some follow-up of the project, etc., etc. But now what's happening? A lot of people is using a lot of artificial intelligence. And those surveys, those results from those surveys are in fact the input data for those artificial intelligence algorithms, because there is a many things, many text, many surveys, etc., etc. And let's be honest, the most of those surveys are just replied as just to finish it, so nobody's not taking care about those answers which they are writing in those surveys. And then we get, let's say, bad data, with those bad data, we train algorithms based on the artificial intelligence, and we are getting bad informations after processing. You can try it, you can see it, use, I don't know, chat GPTs and other things, and play a little bit with some kind of the informations, things which are very close to you, which you know very well, and then you will see that it is trained based on some kind of the service and other things, and the people are using it, and they are putting it in media, in conclusions, in, I don't know, I can see many things in final papers, PhD papers of my students, etc., etc., and that's not really true. That's not really it. So I think that we definitely should change the structure of those surveys and of those input data, where, I don't know, maybe something on those answers should be like 2 + 2 at the end, just the people answer on it, to include more a little bit in all of those things which they are fulfilling, because those data will be used for something else. And if we don't give accurate and precise data, we will not get accurate and precise information, which we will use later on. So that's definitely something what's already happening. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Very valid and hot subject. We have that at the universities all the time. But later on I will show you on my phone my discussion with this internationally known artificial intelligence. And the good point is that when I complained that the answer was just a collection of data from not well proved at the basis books, I got a comment, why don't you teach me? And then I said, okay, welcome, I just start a course on artificial intelligence at the university. It's quite interesting, actually, because these are the algorithms that they educate themselves. Sorry for interruptions, but when I hear that artificial intelligence is important for taking decisions based on surveys, which actually this artificial intelligence generate, then they start to analyze them, and then we should answer questions which, anyway. And here, do you think that we have specific point to address in these programs to give Peter the chance to give to Milena? Is there something specific? I don't know how many of you know the previous charter of access. You don't know. It was published in 2016, and just my impression when I read it now back, we use it a lot because of Maria Curie program and more and more. At that time, it was a very valid document for 2016 for isolated researchers. It was not, when you read again the document, it's quite interesting, not a long one, but actually it focuses on the needs of a researcher, not of a team or institution or whatever, and not industry at all. So now we somehow should reflect this paradigm that industry must be highly technological and so on and so forth. So that's so overall level of funding. Here this question is very strange for access.
So this is about that you as a researcher can get, let's say, a fund for access to whatever infrastructure. Is that what I read here? So what I read here, so how it is now, so the transnational access is one researcher is asking for access to a facility, and this is done within a project. And what this question is, should we decouple this from the project-based approach and just as a researcher like in Marie Curie, just ask for access to whatever infrastructure? Is that what I think is behind this? Do we think this is a good idea? So that is perhaps a better question.
know better. This is the microphone for you, because this is part of stress.
No, but actually, those questions were prepared by DGRTD, not by us. No, but as far as I understood, that question is whether you think that the future FP10 or the work package, work program for research infrastructures in 2026-27 should be changed or should reflect the specific needs for access or already, which are not covered yet by the current financial sources or by the current financial tools which are introducing by this framework program. Maybe your input from a couple minutes ago regarding some things or thinking about the specific education for the users of research infrastructures. This could be one of the inputs which could be put there somehow. And of course, if you are thinking that so far the access is covered from different sources like Marie Curie actions or other things.
I didn't think from Marie Curie, but I think if I see this question, it could be organized in a way like Marie Curie is organized. So if you put a part of the framework program for access under research infrastructures, if you make the call more general instead of project-based, then you don't have to write as a research infrastructure your project and so on, but the researchers who want to have access to something, they can write a proposal like they do for Marie Curie inside this bigger, let's say, call, which is not project-based, but it is, let's say, user-based. And then you have something that is like Marie Curie, but maybe you can also, that was what I suggested to the Commission. Why do you not have Marie Curie also having the access to research infrastructures? But you can also put this here and leave Marie Curie as it is, and you can as a researcher perhaps combine it or something. But this was why I asked, do we want this? So that is, I think the Commission is asking us, do we want this? So do we want to have the call for transnational access based on the researcher itself, or do we want to base it on a project by one researcher, a research infrastructure that is making a project and so on? So that is totally different, because then you have, let's say, 5 projects. So as a user, you can have access through transnational access only for 5 research infrastructures. You understand what I mean? It's difficult to write it down. I can come later, but I think we get the idea that if you do it not based on the project itself.
But not based on research infrastructure, in fact, it's based on user.
Yes, based on the user. So the user is then they have to write a project then. Yes.
And probably involve and say, okay, we want to access to this infrastructures, and it is my project, and I can be funded by European Commission from the research infrastructure program.
Yes.
It's completely different.
So that is completely different, because then you can choose as a user what infrastructure you want to use. And then you get a completely different, let's say, arena, because then users are also saying what kind of infrastructure they are using most, for instance. So this is interesting, I think. If I were RTD, this was also something that is making it interesting. But the user be paying the research infrastructure then? So, in fact, a little bit. It is depending on the access that is done by the research infrastructure. So if the research infrastructure is asking money for the access, so in fact RTD is paying part of this, as they are doing now as well, but then they do it only on the project that is written by 1, 2, 3 or 5 research infrastructures. Now there is no project written. It is just a user who was asking money from the bigger pot of funding for transnational access.
Yeah, but you lose benefit because transnational access was also opportunity for research infrastructure to develop networking and
Of
to
course.
develop
Yeah.
connection and so on in the same community. And so it could be, but for research infrastructure, I think also it could be a question.
So
Because
of course.
for transnational access, it was also an opportunity to get more visibility in their domain and so on. So, but it's question.
Of course, there are two sides of the medal.
Yeah.
So if you want to have visibility as a research infrastructure, you want to have it project-based. If you want to have it more easy for you and you only want to have users, then it is perhaps a good idea. Or they want to have both.
Yes, thank you. I have just a small comment because most of the time each research infrastructure has already its own access policy with call for proposal and committee selection. So perhaps one idea to have also this possibility is to have a kind of reserve time for those projects for each research infrastructure, and having this in mind that, for example, every year you can have such project elected, and so they will be able to access to research infrastructure. But most of the time the schedule is very booked for each infrastructure, so it is a parallel access. Thank you.
We have very short time to discuss the 4 questions, but most of the ideas I just heard are relevant to be transferred to landscape analysis, specifically regarding access to research infrastructure. So one of the things I would underline here for the landscape analysis is this what Jeanette just told, and you supported, that access to research infrastructure in the landscape analysis should be specifically not distinguished, the word is not correct, but should be different and well explained for research infrastructures with different fields. I don't know, should we compare Marie Curie access and this access, but this is a good idea to mention that access of a researcher by definition is project-based, actually, Jeanette, because they apply for specific ETN or RTN or whatsoever, because they have something in mind, and usually they point, they show, I would like to go to this and that place, or to use that and that place. Yeah, that's it. So I don't know how in the landscape analysis we should reflect that, but in my view, we have a very broad landscape in Europe with 47 already research infrastructures, but then probably we need every year school for users to tell them what is provided by this and that and that. The people now have difficulties to see what kind of services they might have, what kind of rights they have, who will protect their results. So we are at the end, so somebody to express an idea, what to include. Not now, we are tired already.
Maybe we can summarize some of the notes. first question regarding the balancing and regarding how to balance the different needs and sections, implementation of access to different user communities. I don't know if we got any specific response or specific reply for that question. Maybe just to be prepared for the different type of access to balance among, of course, it's individual among all of the research infrastructures as I heard.
I mean, one thing we didn't touch on is the balance. You know, when we talk about different modes, we often talk about, is it excellence-based, whatever that means? Is it access for industry? Is it access for particular mission-based things? I would continue to argue we should never lose sight of excellence-based fundamental research. And I think the main balance that many of us, not all, but many of us face is how we balance excellence-based against the other modes. And I don't think there's any perfect answer to that, but it's a plea really never to lose sight of also continuing to support fundamental research in an area in which we're increasingly being asked to address missions, which we absolutely should. But I think that, for me, that balance is a critical one. Another aspect of excellence-based is when you're a facility that can offer your services to a huge range of sciences, you know, how do you balance cultural heritage against, I don't know, structural biology? And there what you need is you need to have very broad range of expertise across the panels that actually select access and also determine the strategy, the future strategy for the evolution of the facility. You know, so in the future, how should a synchrotron evolve? Well, it needs to be in close contact with all the relevant communities to be able to try to find the balance across the range of science that it continues to support. But that's only one aspect of balance. Very few research facilities ever are in a position where they have too much industrial access. Industrial access is almost always at a low level. So I wouldn't regard that as a tension, a challenge in the mixture.
Okay, Peter, you should close already.